Let's create a pivotal impact. Friends in the industry. So I'm a big advocate for our industry. And I'm really an advocate, honestly, when I say that, for the people in our industry and for people that are willing to take what they've learned over the years and invest it back into, maybe it's the next generation into our industry, but really just investing it back into the people of the industry. I think that's one of the greatest components of the transportation industry is the people, the opportunities, but also the opportunity to serve and to give back. And that's why I'm super excited for today's conversation, as I get to speak with Inspector Alan W. Wintermute R.S.E, retired, on his journey in law enforcement as an inspector, but also as a mechanic, which is a trade that I highly respect both of those professions, as well as we get to dive into his book, Insights from Inside, where Alan was able to take all of his knowledge, well, part of it, because I know there's so much there, and really form it into a way so that way us as industry can really understand what is it that's expected of us. So I highly recommend that you check out his website. Just go to alanwwintermute.ca. You can learn more about Alan after this episode, but you can also purchase a copy of the book Insights from Inside. So I'm really excited for the impact that this conversation is going to have, just because Alan, I've had a handful of conversations now, and he's just genuinely a really good guy, really cares about the industry and really cares about making an impact. So again, look forward to the impact it's going to have. Let's get to it. Alan, welcome to the Truck Focus podcast. I'm really excited for our conversation today for a couple of reasons. First off, all of the conversations we've had to date have been really uplifting, and you're really industry focused, advocacy focused. And we're going to dive obviously into your experience as an inspector with law enforcement, going to dive into the book. And I'm just really grateful for your time, because I really respect your journey. And I think just being able to use the podcast platform to highlight just the respect that you can have in industry and the actual impact you can have, I think super important. So yeah, welcome. I'm excited.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So appreciate that. Why don't you start us off and kind of walk us through who you are and talk about your journey in the transportation industry and kind of whichever direction you want to go to start.
Well, I started my career in transportation as a mechanic. I apprenticed in a well-respected shop out of Toronto, Ontario. Completed a 5-year apprenticeship and wrote my license. Got the interprovincial seal first time out, which opened a lot of doors for me as far as being recognized Canada-wide as a licensed mechanic. After I worked in that industry for a while, there was a bit of a downturn in the economy, and a lawyer wanted somebody with product knowledge to help him out with some cases he was on. So that got my feet wet into law. I'd always been a little bit curious. I ended up working for a few years as a paralegal before the province of Ontario required them to be licensed. And then through another downturn in the economy and the lawyer wanting to be retired, it opened up the door to apply for the inspector's position with the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario. That goes back to 2003, and I was lucky to have one of 42 spots. And as it turned out, there were 6 licensed mechanics hired that year, I being one of them. So with that, it gave me some theory knowledge that I hadn't had, as far as what the Highway Traffic Act and other regulations throughout North America required. That kind of reinforced what I already knew as a mechanic. So I worked in that until 2020 when COVID hit, and at that point I'm a month or two away from my 65th birthday, and I'm thinking, gee, there won't be a better time. Let's do it that way. There won't be a better time to take my exit. So I come out at that point, and I'm thinking, okay, what do I do now? I've got all this knowledge, and every once in a while the phone will ring, and I've got a friend that says, okay, I just got stopped by one of you guys. What do I do now? Which opened the door then to be like a consultant. So I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be presentations I can make to the larger companies So I sat down and started making a list of areas that they might be interested in. And then from there, the wife basically said, "Hey, all right, you got this list. What can you possibly say about all this stuff?" So I started making notes on the individual topics, my favorites being the first ones I did. And pretty soon I've got a number of pages written. And I'm thinking, okay, I should go the PowerPoint route. And it occurred to me I don't have quite enough here for pictures. I'm going to have to really scurry for that. So I kept making my notes, and the next thing I know, I've got over 100 pages written, and I'm thinking, gee whiz, I'm only halfway through. So that got me thinking into a book. I went back to my wife and said to her, "Would you mind having a look at this, see what you think?" And she got into about, I don't know, maybe 15 pages, handed it back to me and said, "Gee whiz, I don't really understand everything you've written." So I said, "Well, like what?" And she pointed out a couple of phrases that I'd used, which are typically used in the industry. And from there, I said, "Okay, I'll put together a glossary, and I want you to try it again." So I was almost 2 weeks getting this glossary put together and put it in alphabetical order so that there was some order that you could find things. And she sat down and read it again. This time she made it through till she said, "Okay, where's the rest? This is really interesting." So with that in mind, I'm thinking, gee whiz, she knows absolutely nothing about the truck industry, and she found this interesting. So from there, I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can do this. And that's how the book was born.
Powerful. That's so cool. And I think so. There's a couple things I wanted to highlight in your story there. So first, you did a great job highlighting the opportunity in industry. Obviously, 5 years to get your red seal, that's tough. Workforce, that's tough. Something happened, and then you were able to pivot. And I think that's something that a lot of people that can have a long-term career and they're successful in the industry is they're able to say, "Hey, you know what? There's an opportunity here. You'll pivot." Okay, you became a paralegal for a little bit. Awesome. And that gave you another foundation that obviously complemented the inspector. So I think that's really important to highlight. But then it goes further than that. And I like the fact that you're able to take now all of that experience and knowledge and care and say, well, now what? It's not okay, that's it. I'm done. I hit the button. That's it. I quit. It's no. Okay, there's still people to help. And you're still getting calls saying, "Hey, what do I do here? I just got pulled in from you guys." So I think keeping that mindset, and then you're able to pivot again and say, well, there's consulting, so there's presentations, which then obviously open a platform for the book. And Insights from Inside is the name of the book. But I just really think it's so crucial to highlight, because often, again, speaking to different people, it's doom and gloom. It's not opportunity and how we can help. So anytime I meet with someone that actually sees the picture and has a long-term career in helping, I think that's really cool. So thanks for sharing that.
My pleasure.
So what would you say, and if you wanted to kind of start or share kind of in any which way in your career as an inspector, but what would you say was an area, I don't know if you want to call it your greatest win or somewhere where you felt you really made a difference or the biggest difference? Where would that be when you're working as an inspector with enforcement?
What I really enjoyed doing was attending trade shows and answering the questions. One of the reasons why that was a favorite is people would come up and say, "Hey, what's the best way to secure?" And then they'd give me the article that they were trying to secure. Or, "Is there anything new in legislation I really need to know about?" Or, "I had this happen to me. Is there a way of preventing that?" And it occurred to me that, okay, yes, I'm there in full uniform, but I'm really not the intimidating creature that I have to deal with when I'm stopping somebody roadside because there is a violation. This is more of a friendly meet and greet and share with them a little bit of knowledge and they'd say to me, "Gee whiz, when I look at the Highway Traffic Act, how am I supposed to find what I'm looking for?" And I had to agree with them. There's no index. There's no index at all. So, to be able to sit there and provide them a business card, if anything comes up in future, feel free to give me a call. Yes, it's the office number, and yes, I'll have to call you back at the end of the day if I'm out on the road, but I'm only too happy to take those kind of calls. So, that was, I guess, the favorite part of the experience. When you talk about a win, I can remember being in the truck inspection station with some recruits, and as an instructor, and we got a long lineup of trucks going by, and I said, you better stop that. I want you to look down at the buttons. Don't try and do this by memory. Make sure you stop this. So they hit the stop button, and they say, okay, what's going on? I said, well, have a look at the wheel that's right in front of you. You notice anything? And, oh, there's only one fastener holding that wheel on. So I said, okay, now look back down at the buttons. I want you to press the button that has it park. Don't make a mistake. So we pressed the button to have him park, and around the back he went. When we went out, showed him why we stopped him. And I said, I noticed when I was approaching your vehicle, you got another brand new set of tires on the other side. Let's see what the fasteners are like. Go around the other side, and there's two fasteners that I can wiggle with my gloved hand. So I said, borrow my gloves. You tell me which fasteners are loose. He does that, and then the officers in training, they've got their gloves on. They're going down and having a look and giving the old touchy-feely inspection. And then some of the the officers in training went to have a look at the other wheels on the truck. And they said, well, gee, there's another fastener loose on one of the other wheels. And the driver's standing there looking at us and said, well, how am I supposed to figure that out? And the one officer in training looked him square in the eye, and I'll never forget what happened next. He said, all of us guys were new to the industry, and we went to check the rest of your wheels, and you're still standing there with a cigarette in your mouth and your other hand on the hip. Why aren't you checking your own truck the same way we did? And his jaw dropped, and he said, okay, I guess I get the point. So I said, well, tell you what, now if you can find the fastener that they're telling you is loose without us pointing you to the wheel, we might keep that in mind when we get the ticket book out. How's that? And he's, oh, I guess I better get busy.
Yes.
So it gives the officers in training a hands-on experience, and those things don't happen often enough that you can say, hey, look, this is what we do find. And it gives the driver a chance to say, holy smoke, okay, so when you guys are checking it with the gloved hands, that's a little bit better than what I've been doing, just standing back looking, counting the fasteners. And I said, did you actually do that this morning? Okay, you got me. So it was kind of an eye-opening experience.
Yeah. And we were talking about this via email too, on the frequency that tires would come off. And I was elaborating. I'm in Calgary, a little south of Edmonton, but there was a handful on the Anthony Henday, the highway up there. And you're kind of like, whoa. And then the stats you were sharing, you're like, whoa, like just, yeah. It's tough. I have empathy for professional drivers, but I don't have very much empathy for non-professional drivers. And the guys that want to have a smoke and bark at you and have a hand on the hip, I'm like, no, you're not really earning the professional title. You're just happen to have a whatever class license needed to operate that piece of equipment. And I think when professional drivers, the ones that have, like, they're dirty from the waist down because they were actually crawling around, touching stuff, handsy feely, like, I think that's so crucial to highlight. And I also like the fact that you can share that story in this environment, but also at the trade shows and say, you do not want to be that guy, because what if he kept going down the road and that tire dislodged and hit a family in a van? Like, because that unfortunately does happen. So I think that is a huge win, where especially from the other officers that you're training, because for them, it's like, whoa, this is real life. Like, it's not just like reading legislation. It's dry. It's hard to always picture things in your mind if you don't have field experience. So to say, okay, I saw 19 violations and I can actually identify on paper how those tie together, that's a huge win for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, and I like when you were talking about the trade show part as well. So when I first entered the industry, our banker gave me an example. So he showed me a stack of business cards, and he's like, "You know what this is?" I'm ignorant. I'm like, "I don't know business cards." And he's like, "No." He's like, "These are my guys." He's like, anytime I have a problem in a field, I'm not the expert. I know who I can call. And I remember being my first transportation safety role, connecting with officers, nerve-wracking at first because I'm at their place of business at a scale. And I'm just like, hey, looking for some help. They ended up coming to our training classroom to set the same example that you could set at a trade show, where you're a human. You're able to answer questions that all of us feel like we're guessing at. We can give you worst case scenarios, and you can give, if it's not an exact, it's, well, I have to see it to believe it, but this could be like, just that type of knowledge is so empowering to a safety role, but also to professional drivers, because then they're going to go tell their friends, hey, I actually talked to an officer about this. And they're like, yeah, right. It's like, no, I literally talked to an officer about this. So I think just that connection and that community building really strengthens the industry. So I'm glad you highlighted that as well.
Yeah, that was my favorite part of the entire working life as a uniformed officer.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. So I want to dive into the book a little bit, Insights from the Road. And first off, congratulations. And I like that you shared the backstory up front, because I think, like we were talking off camera, I really want to become an author, and I just know I'm not quite there yet. And when you're talking about everything that goes into being the author, it's like, okay, that's a lot. So can you walk us through what sparked? I know you mentioned the presentation, and I know when your wife said, okay, what's next? Is that the moment that you're like, hey, I have to finish this as a book? Yes, this is going to be a book. Was that kind of the moment for you, or what kind of solidified, yeah, I need to finish this as a book?
You know, the honest answer to that is when I come out of the workplace and I come home and said, okay, what now? It was truly a what now moment that probably lasted about 6 months. So to say I always planned on writing a book, no, I wouldn't be honest with you. This was something that I started out thinking, okay, it'd be a PowerPoint, and I was developing the storyline that would go with those kind of presentations, and I shifted gears because I'm thinking, gee, if I complete this as a book, the tone would be a matter of fact type of thing. I'm not telling a whole lot of anecdotes in there, although there's a handful. And there's I don't know, 5 pages of index, so somebody can actually use it as a reference. And because the laws governing commercial vehicles, and it's a regulated industry, travels throughout North America, and there's so much similarities to all of this. It's good not only Canada-wide, but goes down into the States. And in some areas, actually the Canada legislation and policies are way ahead of what the states have. For example, the National Safety Code, load security and truck inspections, just to name a couple of them. And then when I started researching what goes on down the States, someone that's working on a truck for 1 year can actually sign their safety certificates. They're not even registered, and they're not even licensed down there in many of the states. So I'm thinking, gee, if I turn this into a book, maybe it'll reach more people than I could as a consultant, doing one-on-one with a company here and a company there. And I really think I've got something here to share with the industry, and maybe bring it up a standard in some of the jurisdictions that they're looking for help. I know that when I went doing some research with some of the states, they're looking for help, and they're certainly receptive with some help. But DriveWise comes to mind. Most of your listeners will know what that is, and they are looking for help, and it's something that I don't know, maybe we can work hand in hand and develop something. So that's how I got to where I am.
Nice. That's really exciting. And it's really empowering too, because I think a lot of our listeners and myself included, we're always looking for that. Like I call it the pull and the push. So pull is KKK, and I'm going to push you to do it now. And I think just hearing your story and hearing the fact that it's actually making a difference and it will continue to do so. And there's partnerships and there's consulting. That's a push moment. That's for someone that's on the lead saying, should I, shouldn't I? Yes, you should. And Alan, you're living proof of why you should. So I think that's really exciting. And yeah, it'll be interesting with DriveWise too, because like there's two programs, one in Alberta, one in BC that are different than DriveWise. And I like the emissions perspectives. I like the bypass perspectives. But once you actually get down into the nitty gritties of the actual, the value of the programs, it's pretty awesome because they just have to level, or they raise the level of safety. But part of that is understanding, okay, well, what's actually required of you and how do you actually do it? So yeah, DriveWise, if you're listening, make sure that you guys connect. I think that's super cool. So,
well, not just that, but with DriveWise, I've got a section in the book that deals with it. And it also lent its way to the title of the book, because there's things that the DriveWise offer the enforcement side of the industry that the motoring side do not know that DriveWise is doing. But my book does clue the reader in as to the sensors that's out on the highway that help the inspector select the next vehicle that needs attention.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I like that. And I think that's really smart when you can build a community around the value of a program. And it's, yeah, you almost feel part of the team there instead of just because like I said, I'm familiar with other programs and DriveWise. And I think the first thing is I don't have to pass the scale. It's like, no, there's a lot more to it than that.
Like, there really is. There really is.
Yeah. So where can people go? Like, what's the website link so people can go and purchase a copy of the book? Where do they visit?
Well, my website is Alan W. Wintermute, which is, I spell my name ALAN W, Wintermute, WINTERMUTE.ca. So you put the www in front of all of that, you've got the website.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'll include the website in the show notes as well. So that way it's easy for people just to click. So when you're talking a perspective, so writing, we're here. Now let's talk about publishing, and let's talk about if you want to go into the marketing side, if it's just having conversations about the book, but how is getting the publisher and getting the book published? How is that process?
Well, Friesen Press is an indie publisher. In other words, you're independent. You go to them, they'll look at what you've written, and they'll offer some guidance as to the requirement for edits and what they can do to help you bring your idea, your initial idea, into something that is ready for market. In my particular case, they evaluated the manuscript and sent back and said, there's a market for this. I know there's a market because, well, her husband drove a truck and he looked at it too and said, gee, can you leave this with me? And of course she couldn't. And she'd only let him have it for an hour. So he was able to read bits and pieces and not the whole thing. But then she recommended some edits. And she didn't tell me what edits. She basically said, you gotta present this thing and allow us to go through it and we'll mark it up with the red ink and help you out with some punctuation and some grammar and a little bit of spelling, and get rid of your phantom capital letters. So when she sent it back to me after that, I quite frankly felt like a grade 3 child all over again. Back in those days, there was an awful lot of red ink on my essays. And in this particular case, I'm thinking, okay, how am I supposed to fix all this? And then it followed it up with a phone call and said, please don't be discouraged. This is how you can go about making this better. And I'm trying to help you. And I said, well, I kind of got that, but gee whiz, where do I start? And she kind of made a joke and she said, well, start with page 1. And, I couldn't help but to laugh and react the same way that you are. And I said, how long do I have to do this? And she said, well, it's your book, not mine. So I went through and fixed it. And she said, send it back to us. And we'll help you polish it maybe a little bit more, because I was focused on the phantom capitals and the punctuation and that kind of thing. And she come back, and this time it's okay. You need to rework this sentence because it doesn't flow, and you need to rework this phrase because I don't really understand it and I couldn't find it in your glossary. So I had to rework some things to make it so that the individual reader could make head and tail out of it. And then again, that's where my wife came in and said, well, are you trying to say? And then I said, well, no. Okay, so tell me what you're trying to say. And well, why don't you just write that? So that was the journey. Okay, like I'm not a professional writer. I'm not a mechanic. So yeah, that's how we worked our way through it. And when I submitted the final version, they basically said, holy smoke, this reads like a human being actually wrote it. It's not, you took the robotics out of it. I'm looking forward to when you read it, Josh, and see what you get out of it, and maybe you can enlighten me as to how you found it. I mean, you kind of know what I'm talking about, and I do refer to the N.S.E. and draw some comparison with some of the American legislation, and I'll be interested to see how you find it.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you emailed me letting me know it was signed, which I think is, I'm very vocal with my hands. Like I can get really excited, and as you can tell, I nod my head in agreement. And when I read that, I was like, yes. And the first thing I did was went and told my wife, like, you'll never guess what, because yeah, we're on this journey together, and it's nice with my son too. And it's just nice hearing the support of your wife too. I think that needs to be highlighted. I think when it's scary, it's different. And like you said, it's like, well, I'm a mechanic, and getting something back that you feel is good. Obviously there's edits, it's overwhelming, but knowing that there's support from all sides, I think that's really encouraging in your story. And then, yeah, knowing that, okay, brought it back. Okay, get it back. The second time, obviously there's more things to do, but again, your wife was right there, able to walk you through, well, what are you trying to say? And I think that's just something that's really key just in your journey. I know my wife, she's my anchor in so many situations where I'll be losing it. I'm like, oh, I don't know about this. And then she's like, no, calm down. Like, what are you trying to navigate through? And like, she's my rock. So it's just, I like hearing that kind of stuff, because again, it does help support the journey. And then, yeah, getting to the place now. So can you walk us through, I was going to ask a different question, but I know what we talked about prior, as well as how you just kind of set the stage. What did it feel like having the physical copy in hand? Can you walk us through just, if it's the emotional side, if it's the accomplishment side, how did you feel once you actually held it?
Well, that's absolutely incredible. There's clearly a difference between looking at the electronic version up on a computer screen and printing off a paper copy that, if you're not really careful with it and put one of those big binder clamps around it, or worse, 3-ring punch through it and put it in a binder, those pages are going to get jostled around pretty quick. But to actually see it with the cover on it, and you open it up and you see a title page inside, and you turn the page and there's a copyright page, and then you get into the next page. Before you get into anything, you see, okay, they actually did include my mission statement. And then I turn to the back and I see the index, and I'm actually feeling it. And I don't know, it just all of a sudden it took on a life all by itself. It's almost like bringing a child into the world, because you can think about what it might be like, but gee whiz, now you got the thing in your hand, and it's like, okay, this is real. So it was truly an exciting moment for me.
Good. Good. Oh, that's good. And I can see it. I love that. I think that, yeah, I call them pivotal moments where something happened and it's just really just like, yes. And it's just really nice to see it because, yeah, that's very, very few people in life get to experience what you got to experience. Where, like you said, it's not the binder with paper, and it's not just something you're reading on a screen that you appreciate. It's wow, this has life. This is going to impact people, so many people, and I think that's just so cool. I'm so proud of you, so happy for you because it's just, yeah, it's essentially it's a dream come true. And even though the dream came, okay, now what type moment, it's still the dream come true. And I just want to like applaud you and celebrate you in that. I think it's really, really cool.
And you know, the equally exciting moment when I told you about, I've got the book and I'll send you a copy, and you say, well, gee, yeah, if you'll sign it, that'd be great. That for me was probably one of the most proud moments that I've been able to truly feel, in perhaps the last, I don't know, 5 years. Just to be able to say, hey, look, I'm sending this book out to Josh, and he's actually wanting me to sign the book. Nobody's asked me to sign anything before. Yeah, that was exciting for me.
That's awesome. And I appreciate you sharing that because that's real. And that, like, I don't know, I'm an emotional person and I'm energetic, and that, like, I felt that. So thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm glad you could appreciate that too, because yeah, I want to celebrate. I also want to learn. It's cool. Actually, I'm entering commercial vehicle enforcement training through CVSA on the 28th is when it starts. We're doing it over a course of 3 weeks, but a 1 week, then a break, then a 1 week. And I'm like, perfect timing because it adds to the conversation, and it's in class for the first time in 2 years since I was working on a different designation. So yeah, I'm just excited for the timing. And then obviously I'm going to showcase it in the class. So all in all, it's a big win. I'm
Very
grateful.
good.
So
Very good.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. So I like the fact that you said it's going to take on a life of its own. Where do you see, I guess, your next steps from here? Part of it I know is going to obviously be promoting the book, which I'm super grateful for the opportunity to spread the word. But are you going to use the book as okay, I need to do a part 2? Are you going to use the book to say, okay, more carriers, I need to get into let me get into your office and let's talk about how I can help? Or what's kind of next steps for you from here?
Well, there's a few large transportation companies out here that basically said, okay, let's have a look at the book. One of which got a copy of the book on Wednesday, almost within the hour of me receiving 10 copies of it. And he called me up the following day and he said, I'm through here to about the 30th or 34th page. I can't remember exactly. And he said, each one of my drivers is going to have a copy of this, and then we're going to be talking about it at our driver meetings. And he said, I recognize the bulk of it is your pre-trip inspection. And I said, well, yeah, it is. And he said, they teach that in the driver training that we got to do the pre-trip, but nobody really tells us what we're supposed to be looking for. They teach us a routine, and then they tell us we don't have to follow it. You're showing us a routine. You're telling us why to follow that routine. And then you're sharing with us what to be looking for, and and you're telling us about, well, for example, steering wheel free play. You said, until I read that section, I was told to check steering wheel free play, but nobody taught me how to do it. You said, with that step-by-step guide, all my drivers are going to know how to do it. And I'm thinking, gee whiz, I didn't realize that you guys weren't trained on some of this stuff. You're trained on air brakes, but then you're not taught other things that are equally important. And he said, and when you're talking about tires, you're talking about how to measure the tread depth and what to look for. I said, but you guys would know that. No, we don't. So it was kind of like, gee. Now, here's one guy that's got the book and he wants 200, and he gave me the exact number, but it was 200 drivers that he wants to have this book. and then say to them, okay, bring the book with you because we're going to have a driver's meeting. We're going to talk about a section of it. And I'm thinking, really? And he said, oh, yeah. And he said, there's going to be times I'm going to ask you to come out. And I'd love to come out. And if they bring the book, I'd like to see how dog-eared the corners of the pages are. And he said, well, I'm hoping they dog-ear a lot of the corners.
Yes.
So it was kind of fun just to listen to this guy. And he had it less than 24 hours.
Wow, that's amazing. And so two things again that you mentioned that I just get so excited on. So first, it's the why. So why am I inspecting this? And I often speak on, I like comparing sports to compliance because it's about teamwork. And I always say, once you understand the rules to the game, it's a lot easier to win. And win doesn't mean cheat. Win means no, you win ethically, you win the right way. And understanding the why am I checking? Like, why does tread depth matter? I don't know. Why does tread depth matter? Like, I'm next to the mountain. So why do you care if you have good tread on your tractor or not? Like, just understanding the why, the rules of the game. And yeah, I think that's a huge component. And then having on the flip side, sorry, the carrier saying, hey, I'm going to advocate for you and the impact because he sees it right away. I also think that's really cool because, again, there's another pivotal moment and a pivotal impact where, okay, let's go change 200 drivers' lives and the domino effect, because I bet you 200 drivers and 200 more drivers, and it's just going to be a reoccurring, just, hey, I'm going to help people. I'm going to help people. I'm going to help people. And I think that's really, really cool.
It's amazing that you say that because that's what crossed my mind too, because every driver is going to know two others. Mm-hmm. And I'm really hoping that the word soon gets out.
Yes. Yeah, I strongly
certainly here to help.
Yes. I was going to be a question of mine too. So I talk about legacy quite often, and legacy not in a when you're gone kind of way, but if you want to call it an instant impact, you enter a room, you have a conversation, you leave. How did you leave that room? You just kind of summarized that question. So I wish I could have asked it 35 seconds prior is, do you think about it, which you do, which I think is phenomenal because I don't think we as people give ourselves enough credit when we think about the impact we're actually creating. And it's not a nice to have, or I wish I could have. It's no. There is proof here that this is working. And I think, well, knowing it's just really the beginning because it's only been a short amount of time since it's been in hand, give it a little bit of time and it's going to spread like a positive wildfire where it's like, oh, I can understand this easily. Okay, that's how you do it. Because a lot of it's not hard. It's just, we just don't know where to find it. So yeah, I'm really excited, but I don't want to steal your answer, but you did answer the question. So if you wanted to elaborate on that just in general, like, do you think about the impact you're having, please do, because I love that question. I love intentionality. So
I honestly don't know where it's going to take me. And when I think back to when I was a kid, my grandmother taught us that our reputation will go further than our feet will ever take us. And as I work my way through life, I find out how true that really is, and it continues to be. I know that I've touched people's lives as a mechanic, as a paralegal, and as an enforcement officer. And now I'm hoping to hopefully maybe touch a few more, having made the book available.
I believe you will. And I'm going to quote that quote because I love that quote, is your reputation, your reputation is going to go further than your feet ever will. I remember that. I made a note of it. So I appreciate that. So yeah, I think that's key. And I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for you're really humble, which I really admire because there's certain people in life that have a certain level of success. They can be proud of things. I love the fact that you're a father, you're obviously a loving husband, and you don't have a chip on your shoulder, but yet you're quite successful in impacting people, obviously your career and stuff. So I really admire that. And I think that's something that just our listeners can really take is, okay, you can do the right thing and not let it go to your head. So I think that's really crucial to understand. And I'm really excited as well, just to see, the next steps unfold, because it's a really exciting journey ahead where so many people are going to be impacted. I just think it's so awesome. So I'm really grateful. I think it's so cool.
Thank you very much. So you're very kind.
So absolutely. So yeah, just in regards to time, in regards to a really great conversation, it is basically at a point where we could come to a close. But in closing, if there is anything else that you would like to share, please do so. But also give a recap of where people can go again, so that way they can purchase a copy of the book.
Well, if you go onto my website, alan-j.ca, Wintermute.ca. On that website, there's buttons on the bottom of it that will take you to your favorite vendor, including Amazon. It will take you back to Friesen Press, which is the publisher's own bookstore. It can also take you into Chapters and the other mainline vendors to order the book and have them send it out to you.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll make sure, like I mentioned before, that I'll include the link directly in the show notes as well. So
much appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. But yeah, as we do come to a close, were there any final thoughts that you wanted to share?
The only thing that I've got is I'm certainly making myself available as a consultant. And actually in the book, on the last page, the last line of the book, I've actually made that offer out there to within the book. If somebody had a question, they've got a way of contacting me on the website and say, hey, how do I? If I can refer them to an actual page in the book, I would. If I'm just answer the question quickly, of course, I'll be happy to do that as well.
Awesome. Okay, and I'll make sure to include all of that in the show notes as well. And we write a blog article for our conversation, so all of that will be listed. So that way people are very clearly aware, okay, this is good, there's more, this is good, there's help, this is good. So but yeah, Alan, honestly, this conversation, it's been a treasure for myself. And I'm just really grateful that I can help celebrate your journey and highlight, obviously, the book. So I think Insights from Inside, for me, I'm excited for it to be here in the next day or two so I can start reading it. And I'm grateful for, you really care about people, grateful that you're an advocate for our industry. And some really good things ahead. So thank you so much again for hopping on the podcast.
Well, thank you very much. It was great to be here.
Awesome. I agree. It's okay. Well, have a good rest of your evening. Thanks again.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks. Alan, honestly, thank you so much for taking the time to hop onto the Truck Focus podcast today. I really admire the journey that you've been on over the last number of years and just creating such a pivotal impact in the transportation industry in ways that I don't know if the industry would fully be able to comprehend. So I really respect from the perspective of law enforcement and just the impact that you're having on making sure that people, are educated and that we have safe vehicles on the roadway. Those are two really key things that I'm just super grateful for all of the number of years that you invested into just being a public servant. We're so grateful as you obviously operated as an inspector, as the mechanic, and now as an author. And I'm super excited. So my copy, Insights from Inside, I'm super excited for it to arrive so I can read it. I know my son Avery's also really excited to read it just because of the fact that we know the author. And I'm so grateful, Alan. And as you just continue to pursue your journey as a consultant, if there's more books, if it's more training, I just think you're going to continue to really impact our industry. And I'm super grateful. So again, thank you so much for taking the time for the recording, for all of the stories. It's just been a really great journey this far. And I'm also excited for us to keep working together and just who knows what we'll get into. So it's really exciting. So all of our dedicated listeners, I really do recommend that you purchase a copy of the book, Insights from Inside. So of course, I've included the website link below in the show notes. So that way it's super easy. Just click, make the purchase, read it, invest it into your own culture. It's just, I'm super excited. I'm super grateful. So thank you again, also from just my own personal journey for your investment of time. And if this is the first time you've ever checked out a Truck Focus podcast, thank you so much for, checking us out, joining our community. So I do ask that you like this episode, that you share it out because we want to spread the word of the good work that Alan's doing, as well as subscribe to the channel that you're listening to. So as always, let's create a pivotal impact. Bye.